Welcome back to MST Systems YouTube channel, Strongman fam. We've got another one that you're going to love today because you're all little grease balls who love talking about steroids. So we're going to do, I have kind of touched on this subject a little bit in other videos. When I talked about my kind of cycle I was going to be doing, I did touch on it a little bit. And I have done a first cycle advice for females, for strong women. But this one's going to be about strongman. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little scenario that you might fit into. So maybe you've gone to the gym a little bit, you've done some training, bodybuilding people like to call it, but they're never ever going to compete, so really they're just lifting weights. And then maybe they get a little bit interested in powerlifting, they do a little bit of powerlifting, and then they go, yeah, not really for me. They start dabbling in strongman. That's a very common scenario people will get themselves into. And then maybe they do the first competition or so, or they train a little bit, or you just get like a little bit of training experience in strongman for about 6 months to a year, and then people start thinking about a first cycle. This is the most common question I get asked is, Shane, I'm thinking about jumping on gear, what should I do for my first cycle? And it's a really complex answer, and often when I answer this question on my Instagram, or even when clients ask me it, unless I've got 30-40 minutes spare, which is pretty rare, you can't really give it its full detail that it needs, because it's a very serious decision, and a lot of people don't even understand that it's a serious decision. They just think they're jumping on a cycle. So I want to go over everything in this video. I'm going to use this video as like a resource basically that I can send to clients. And obviously it's going to be out here on the interweb for free to my 5 loyal viewers. If you're a loyal viewer, by the way, if you can comment below for the algorithm, it really helps me out. Because it's a bit of graft putting this content out. But anyway, I'm going to use this as a resource mainly for clients, but obviously it's going to be free content as well. So if you're having the pleasure of watching it, then lucky you. So, first cycle considerations. The first thing that I want to present to you and just educate you a little bit on is the fact that people look at steroids and they look at like the first cycle a little differently than they look at everything else when it comes to strength training. So for example, when you start strongman training, you might hire a coach, okay? Now, the coach's job, when everything's broken down into kind of what the coach is actually doing is, the coach's job is, number one, make sure you're acquiring and mastering the skills that are required for strongman, so that you get safe and efficient positions for your own leverages on your deadlift, your squat, your log, your Atlas stones, making sure your footwork and pelvis position and brace is correct on your yoke, etc. Skill acquisition is one of the fundamental things, and it can be broken down into many, minute details, okay? So that's number one job of the coach. The second job of the coach is to make sure you're getting your physiological adaptation so that your strength potential is getting higher. So basically, hypertrophy and hyperplasia, depending on what stuff you're doing, will be, one of the considerations for programming, because the more muscle tissue you have, the higher your strength potential is. So the coach really has 3 jobs. It's the skill acquisition, the physiological side, and the neurological side. So making sure that they put your central nervous system in tune and peak it to 100% for a given competition date or a given date that you're doing a certain lift or whatever. So the coach really is there to optimize the nervous system, optimize physiological adaptations, and optimize skill acquisition. So they're optimizing lots of different things, okay? Now, another part of strength training and strongman is nutrition. So you might hire a nutritionist, or maybe you do it yourself, and your goal there is to optimize your nutrition. So it's to optimize your macronutrients for your individual digestive and the way you process foods. Some people might get on with slightly higher carbohydrates, lower fat. Some people might need a little bit higher fat. Whatever it is, lots of things will come into play. Your own ability to release and process insulin, and there's loads of detailed factors that basically go in with nutrition. And you want to optimize your nutrition so that your recovery and your performance in the gym is on point. So you're going to look at your peri-workout nutrition, like what am I eating before I train, what am I eating intra-training, what am I eating after training, etc. We break it down into optimizing nutrition for the individual, okay? And that's going to be different for everybody. Something I like to point out is, the better your genetics, usually the less protein you need. That's a really common trend that people know about is, if you're not quite as genetically gifted, you're probably going to need more protein to recover from your training sessions. So there's one little example for you as to what I mean by optimizing your individual nutrition. So when it comes to PEDs, people just think, oh, I'm going to get on a Miller test, I'm going to get on this, I'm going to get on that. But they often forget that the whole idea of PEDs is we're optimizing hormones to get the best out of your body, okay? So there's the number one thing you need to understand, is that we're not taking steroids, okay? That's a bad way to look at it. We're optimizing your hormones, okay? And when you think of it like that, it starts to open up different avenues and different pathways and starts to become a lot more individual for you, the user. All right, so if you go to my previous video where I talk about my steroid cycle, I give you an off-the-cuff example cycle for someone, which if you came to me on Instagram and asked me quickly, I'd say this, but this is going to be much more detailed, guys, okay? So we need to remember that we're optimizing hormones for performance, all right? So the first thing that comes into play, if you have not optimized your nutrition, if you've not optimized your training, and if you're not optimizing your sleep and recovery modalities outside of the PEDs, then do that first, because there's no point in getting to this step if you're not optimized these things, all right? Another thing to note is this: the first point I mentioned, skill acquisition, all right? Taking PEDs will not, or should I say, optimizing your hormones will not increase the speed that you acquire skill, all right? So optimizing your hormones is going to help you recover between sessions, have a higher, a more optimized nervous system, so you're able to get like higher intramuscular coordination, which basically just means that you're able to contract better. So it's going to do those things, but it's not going to teach you better positions. So one of the things that I think people make a mistake of is they jump on gear before they've got the skill, all right? And strongman takes a while to acquire skill because you've got so many different events. If your rack position on log isn't correct, your dip isn't correct, and your leg drive isn't optimal, and you're not learning to keep your head back and all the things that I talk about in my log press tutorial video, it doesn't matter how much gear you take, you're not going to get very good at log. So before you even think about PEDs, you need to make sure your skill is high on all events. You need to make sure you optimized your training, your nutrition, your sleep, and your recovery modalities. But the skill is the most important thing, because so many people jump on gear before they've built any skill, and you're just wasting it. Okay, and it's a big mistake, guys. It's a huge mistake, because if you've got bad positions on your log and deadlift, okay, but you jump on gear and then you peak those lifts upon those positions, you are further ingraining and further cementing those positions into your nervous system, and you are further basically taking yourself steps away from optimal performance. Because the longer you do these bad positions for, the harder it is to undo them. You add PEDs in the mix, which start to ramp your nervous system and help ingrain positions a little more. You're then just ingraining bad positions, and it's going to be so hard to get out of it. It can be so hard to get out of that after a certain period of time, it's almost impossible to reverse. So make sure that you're doing stuff properly and efficiently before you even consider gear, guys, because you're just going to ruin your performance further down the line. Trust me, I know from experience. Trust me. Anyhow, we're talking about optimizing hormones here. So, although it's been a bit rambly so far, I need to get that out of the way because it's real true, and people don't understand that. Okay. So we're optimizing hormones. We're not planning a first cycle. Think about that. We're not just going to go online and go on a forum that says this is a good first strength cycle, guys. We're going to take this much test, this much DECA, and some D-ball. We're going to learn how to optimize your individual hormone levels. All right. So when we plan a first cycle, we always want to look at testosterone. Testosterone should be the first hormone that you go to, because by the way, guys, this is all for men. I think I said at the start, but it's for men. All right. Testosterone is going to be the base of most of your cycles, because it's obviously the predominant hormone that's going to regulate the things that we want in strength training. It's going to increase hypertrophy. It's going to increase, like I say, intramuscular coordination. And it's going to ramp your nervous system a little bit, and it's going to give us everything we need to perform better. It's also going to have many other changes that people don't take into account, like mood. No matter what anybody says, because some people say, oh, roid rage isn't true, and this isn't true, and that's not. Everything that people say is true, but it's exaggerated, because when you take someone and put them on testosterone, their whole personality gets like enhanced. Okay, and this is one of the things that I always point out to clients when they ask me about jumping on the first cycle is, if you're at a point in your life that everything is stable, everything is sweet, you're really happy, then going on testosterone, you probably won't notice much changes going on you in terms of your actual environment. But for example, if you're in a job that you don't quite like, but you're just kind of stuck in a rut, or maybe you're in a relationship that you don't really get on that well, you probably shouldn't be together, but you're just kind of together, and nobody dares push a button and leave and move on. When you get on testosterone, it gives you this enhanced mood, this enhanced confidence, and it makes you more assertive, and it makes you just basically act upon your feelings a little more. So I always say to people, like, if you're in a shitty relationship or a shitty job, if you get on your first steroid cycle, you might not even be, your first testosterone cycle, you're not even thinking about these outcomes, but it's very, very, very possible that your whole life in 6 months could look completely different to what it did if you didn't take the testosterone. Now, this can be a good thing, or it could be a bad thing. Like, we can't see the path that you're going to take. But all I'm saying is that if you get on testosterone, trust me, the direction of your future will change. Okay, so your ability to stay and put up with a relationship, or your ability to deal with stress at work, all these things, they do change, guys. Slightly, not to the point that you're going to go out and start knocking people out, but if you're the type of person that goes out and has a drink and gets in fights anyway, then you get on some testosterone, that's going to be enhanced. You see what I mean? It enhances everything that you're feeling, everything that you're doing, and it's just true. And your personality and the way you act will change depending on what dosage you're on. 100%. Your sex drive will change. Your kind of threshold for when you snap will change. If someone's annoying you, you might be able to go to a certain point before you start getting like, I'm gonna fucking blow you. You might not even get to that point. It might be like 2 steps before that where you just blow. So getting on testosterone it's a big decision, guys. It's not something that you're just going to do and it's going to change your performance in the gym and that's the only effect. Getting on testosterone, you are changing your whole environment. You're changing the way you process everything. External stimulus, people saying stuff to you, people interacting with you, the way you respond to situations. Even as simple as a bird DMs you on Instagram, and you're in a relationship and you would never reply. If you're on certain gear and you're maximum horny, you might reply to that, and that might be a mistake. Your missus might see that, you might get it. You see what I mean? There's a lot to consider when you're altering your hormones. It's not just that the gym's going to change. Trust me, you get on testosterone, your whole outlook on life, everything you do is going to change, guys. And you need to be aware of that. You need to take that into account, because it's not just as simple as, I'm going to jump on a bit of test and get a big log. It's life-changing. You're changing your whole environment. You're changing everything, okay? So remember that. So now we're going to delve into actually what to do and what to take. So everybody's going to be different. So you need to get blood work done. 100% you need to get blood work done. If you're serious about this, you have to get blood work done, because you're not going to fucking know. So I would say for most people, if you're really looking to get serious about hormone optimization, you need to first accept one fact, which is, if you really, really want to do this, then it's not going to be the safest thing or the best thing to go on and off cycles. I know that was kind of the way it was done in the past. You do 12 weeks on, do a PCT, 12 weeks off, but it isn't the best way to do stuff, because people vastly underestimate the amount of time a post-cycle therapy takes to actually work properly, especially after a cycle of like testosterone or something that can shut you down quite harshly. So if you're going to be actively competing in Strongman and you're wanting to do multiple comps per year, then you just can't be like on, off, because not only is your mood and the way you act, the way you are with your partner, etc., going to completely fluctuate every single month depending on what you're on and what you're doing, but your strength is going to get affected. I've seen guys that have been natural for like 6, 7, 8 years of training. They jump on a mad cycle of gear for quite 6 months or so, they come off, and during post-cycle therapy, they're actually weaker than before they used gear, because the hormones are just all over the shop. So you need to understand there's going to be these huge fluctuations. So if you're going to do this, you need to accept that you're going to be blasting and cruising, which is where you're going to be on low dose testosterone and then maybe ramping it, a little bit closer to competitions. So you need to accept that fact first of all. So I would always start with your cruise dose, which for most people you're looking at round about 125 milligrams per week of testosterone, which is roughly enough to put you at the top end range of natural, okay? But here's the thing, when you take that dosage of testosterone, you're going to get your test level to a certain point. So you need to go and have a blood test done to see what that test level is coming out at, all right? Because one person takes 125 and another person takes 125, there could be slight fluctuations in where they're at. And the reason why you need to get blood work done, guys, is because you need to understand that your cruise dose is going to be your personality. It's going to be the way you are, the way you act, the way you feel, the way you recover from training, and the way you're kind of performing in the gym for the majority of the year when you're cruising, okay? So we need to understand what makes you feel the best, what puts you in a good mood, what gives you good sex drive, what makes you get up in the morning feeling full of energy, okay? What makes your joints feel good and proper recovery from sessions. Is it 125 milligrams a week? Is it 125 milligrams split 4 days a week into micro shots and more frequent injections? Do you feel all right off 2 days a week? Maybe you need testosterone and you need to do sub-Q every single day micro injections to feel the best and get the most stable blood levels. Very individual thing that you need to figure out. So the first thing is you need to make sure you optimize your cruise, because if you can't optimize your cruise, then you don't know what the fuck you're doing with your blast. So 125 milligrams per week, guys, and you're going to be figuring out where your estrogen should be at and where your testosterone should be at, where your prolactin should be at. Okay, they're your kind of three main drivers, in my opinion, that you want to look at. And everyone's going to be a little bit different, okay? I had one guy, his estradiol level was about, I think it was 250. Was it 250? Yeah, it was sub 300. And anyhow, it was sub 300 estradiol level, and his TRT doc put him on anti-estrogen because he said it's too high. But prior to the blood test, he was feeling amazing because he actually gets on with a fairly high estrogen level. And for me, and the way I do it with my athletes is, if they're feeling good and they have no side effects, then I don't really employ any anti-estrogens. But for you guys, if you're trying your first cycle and you're on 125 mega test, if your estrogen gets like to the 200 range, you might start getting like sensitive nipples or some side effects, and you might need to bring that down a little bit. So then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking at, first of all, well, how do I want to manage my estrogen level? More frequent injections is always the first place to go, which is why I said you need to figure out how many injections you need. If you're cruising on 125 mg and your estrogen's too high and you're only doing 1 shot a week, do 2 shots a week. It might bring that estrogen down. Do 3 shots, do 5 shots, do shots every day. Then you might be like, right, if I do shots every day on my cruise, my estrogen level stays where I want it, my prolactin's good, etc., I'm feeling great. Then you've built a cruise model for yourself that's optimizing your hormones. All right. Instead of, what people do is they go online and people say, oh, do this and take this anti-estrogen and that. Well, how do you know you need an anti-estrogen? Like, if you've never done it without the anti-estrogen, if you've never played with more frequent injections, how do you know? And then when you're taking the anti-estrogen, how do you know that you're not taking too much and you're crashing your estrogen? You know what I mean? You've got to remember, like, we're optimizing your hormones. We're trying to make everything better, not just training. Too many people get to the point where, well, training's going really well, I feel strong, but I feel like shit the whole time. I feel like shit everywhere else in my life, but when I lift weights, it feels good. We're optimizing hormone levels. That's what you need to remember. It's a more complex thing than just doing your first cycle. It's more complex than that. You've got to figure shit out. So, step 1, figure out your cruise. Start with 125 mg roughly of testosterone, okay? Optimize your estrogen and prolactin levels, ideally through frequency of injections first, and then if that doesn't, if you can't take control of it that way, you're gonna have to look at something like aromasin. Maybe with the prolactin, you might have to supplement with like vitamin B6, P5P is a good one for controlling prolactin, or VE as well. You can basically, you're gonna have to learn how to control these things to put you in a range where you're feeling absolutely sweet. Okay. Now, once you've optimized your cruise level, what you've got now is you've got your baseline. That is what you will use now whenever you're not blasting for a competition. And then what we need to do is learn to optimize your blasts into competition. So all you would need to do is pretty much a similar thing to what I said in that last video when I showed my cycle. Is I like to use for a blast the milligram per kilo ratio, not because I believe that it has any individual bearing. It's just a nice little way to get a dosage that feels individual to you, and then you can go from there. So I like to use 3 milligrams per kilo for a first cycle. Again, I'm not saying for any reason that dosage is perfect. It's just a nice way to work it out. So if you're 100 kilos, you would do 300 milligrams of testosterone for your first blast. Now, here's where you're going to learn again. Even though we're blasting, we're trying to optimize our hormones. So if you're on 125 mega test, we've pretty much tripled it, haven't we? So usually with hormones, we can kind of stay in a similar ratio. So if your testosterone triples and your estrogen's in a good level, you probably want that to triple as well. So you just keep an eye on that. And then again, you're just basically building this bit of data. It's like, where do I want my hormones to be at on this blast? Where feels good, etc. And then you would basically just use this as stepping stones, guys, to build upon, to be perfectly straight with you. As soon as you've done your first blast into competition, you would then revert back to your cruise dosage, make sure that your blood work is in line again in terms of hormones I'm on about here, and then you're sweet. Now, over time, what will happen is you're going to be gaining muscle tissue, you're going to be gaining strength, and as you kind of get a little bit further down the line, you might want to experiment with different drugs. So then on your second blast, you might add in, I'm a big fan of Primabol, and I think it's a really great second drug to add in. DHT derivative, it's got a really nice binding affinity to the androgen receptors in the muscle. Just a good all-round drug and great for strength. So I would say maybe start with that as a second compound. So you could maybe go to your same blast dose of testosterone, but then add in 300 milligrams of something of Primabol and alongside of it. Again, collecting data, figuring out how you feel, making sure that everything's in line, not just in the gym, but outside the gym. Are you sleeping okay? Is your fucking hair falling out? Are you feeling all right? Are you getting a stiff? Are you putting in good shifts? Are you sleeping well? Are you waking up feeling energized? All these things come into play. Now, the longer you're on this blast and cruise for, because I believe if you're going to be blasting and cruising, you need to be fully invested in the sport. You need to be doing it for a good couple of years, and then you're going to get a good couple of blasts, a good couple of cruises out of this model. And then when it's time to come off, you can do your big post-cycle therapy afterwards. Now, things to let me get a quick drink. Things to note that I wish I knew when I first jumped on gear. Personally, I wish I used HCG. So I would recommend anybody that's going to be starting to do HCG. I'm not going to talk about a protocol in this video. You can just go online for that. They're fairly simple. But I would be running HCG alongside your testosterone from the get-go. The reason being is it helps your natural testosterone stay there, and if you're playing with these lower dosages that you should be, keeping your natural testosterone there in the background is beneficial. Also, it's going to make that transition period when you come off gear, it's going to make that a lot easier, basically. So I would really recommend you run HCG throughout. I wish I did. I didn't. Like I say, I'm speaking from experience that if I could go back 10 years and tell myself to, I would. So obviously I'm going to tell you guys to. Other things, blood markers can get out of control. Things to look out for that you need to be aware of. So your hematocrit level and your red blood cell count will slowly increase. It is a good idea to sign up to give blood, and every 3 to 6 months give a pint of blood. Make that a habit if you're going to be blasting cruising, because your hematocrit level will basically slowly be going up the whole time. And the thing with your hematocrit level is, it's not going to get out of whack overnight. It's not going to go crazy in 2 months. But if you're going to be blasting cruising for a long while, then it's going to eventually get high. And this is the blood level that basically can cause issues with like clotting and stuff like that. So it's what you need to keep an eye out for. Giving blood is the best way to basically counteract this. If you go, obviously I'm in the UK, if you just go and sign up for, just to give blood for the NHS, obviously they will ask you if you use steroids and all these other stuffs. And if you say yes, then obviously you're gonna not be able to, give blood directly for the NHS. So, if your morals don't want you to lie on the form, then you can go to the companies like the Blood Lab and Transform Now that you can actually pay to have a venesection, I think it's called. I think that's what it's called, where they just drain the blood for you. So you can do that. If you do go for the NHS, then as far as I'm aware, it's actually better for the end receiver. Oh shit! Fucking hell! Got hamstring cramp. Oh god. As far as I'm aware, it's not in any way harmful to the receiver of the blood. Obviously, unless you've got some kind of fucking disease from pinning or whatnot. But the additional red blood cells that you've got is actually good for the person receiving it. So I don't believe that. Someone can correct me on that in the comments. I'm not 100% sure of that. I got told that by somebody who are very respected in this industry, so I've kind of took it as gospel. But I've never looked into it, to be straight with you. So you might want to look into that one. But anyhow, there's the way to manage your red blood cells, and 2 supplements that I think that you should look at and potentially use throughout. You've got Metformin. I believe that you should be taking, starting with about 500 milligrams of Metformin a day, usually taken at night after a big meal, and you can slowly increase that to about 1,000 to 1,250 milligrams per day. Metformin, I could probably do a whole other video on Metformin, to be honest with you, so I won't go into too much detail, but Metformin will keep a lot of your blood levels, like your cholesterol, healthy and stable, whilst also having some good effect on your ability to utilise your carbohydrates and help with insulin resistance. And it's got heaps of benefits, but I'll do another video on Metformin, because it's really, really, really an amazing drug. And if you're using PEDs, I think that you should look at taking a Metformin daily for your health and longevity. So final one would be telmisartan. Might be butchering the pronunciation of that, but basically this is a blood pressure control medication, which I'm not really qualified to completely speak and dissect it for you, but I recommend you look into taking a telmisartan for blood pressure control, and it's got a lot of benefits, guys, a lot of benefits. Like I say, it's worth looking into. I don't want to go into too much detail because I'm not really qualified to speak on that. There's loads of good information out there on telmisartan by more educated people than myself, like Victor Black is great for it. Who else has spoken on telmisartan? Alex Kickel, I believe, has done a lot of stuff on that. But basically, telmisartan is a longevity-based drug that I would look into taking for a PED user, because a lot of the side effects that you will get chronically, so they will. What I mean by that is they will happen over time. So it's not like you're going to take gear and get some acute effect instantly that telmisartan is going to cure, but it's going to help lower your blood pressure. It's a vasodilator, I believe, so it's going to obviously that's how it helps lower the blood pressure. So it's good for clotting issues. And I believe it has some effect on insulin resistance as well. It's got a heap of benefits that a PED user, that's even just like if you're going on blast and cruising, you could take telmisartan, pretty much all year round, and it's only going to give you positives, and it's only going to keep you healthy, and it's only going to basically keep you. You got to remember that when you're using gear, or when you're optimizing your hormones, should I say, you're doing stuff for a period of your life. Like no one really is going to be doing this for like 40 years. You know what I mean? 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it may be, from when you're 20 years old till 40, or whatever, or 30 till 50, whatever you're doing it for. Eventually, you're probably going to calm down with it, and you're going to go on to a more, even if you stay on testosterone and you just stick to like a cruise dose, you're going to calm down with the blasting. So you want to minimize the damage that you're doing to yourself, because anybody that tells you that you're not doing damage to yourself doing this stuff is lying, because it just will. If you're going on and off cycles of blast cruises, adding different compounds in, you're going to do stuff to yourself. It does so much stuff. Like there's so many things, I can't even go into half of it, because the side effects of long-term usage of androgens, they're global. They're all over the body. You know, you get everything. There's effects in the brain, lungs, heart. You know, your digestive system. There's even been on autopsies of bodybuilders. There's been like random scar tissue build up in testicles and all sorts of stuff. Because it can do loads of stuff like liver cancers. You know, there's so many things that you can get from PEDs that people don't realise. And if you're using them for a long period of time, things like metformin and telmisartan are going to limit the amount of damage that you're going to do to yourself when you're that period of however long it is, 5-10 years that you're using stuff. If you can limit the damage you're doing when you finally transition off into a different lifestyle than strength athlete, you're going to be much better off, and you're going to be really glad you did it, because the amount of people that finish their 10-15 year stint and go, oh, I'm fucked. There's too many of them. Manage stuff yourself. Then they're the ancillaries that I'll be looking at that are kind of drug based. But then if you go to supplement needs, these guys have some amazing supplements that you can use that are over the counter to keep your body in check. So things I would look at that are really underused is kidney supplements. So I believe that supplement needs have, I think it's literally just called kidney support. I'm going to check actually, because they've got liver stack. Yeah, so they've got the liver stack and they've got the Tudka and Knack stack that you could use. So yeah, supplement needs, Dean St. Mark's has some really good supplements on there. CV stack as well. Pretty much anything off supplement needs, guys, is absolutely class. So don't underestimate the effectiveness of some of these supplements. Again, they're just things that you've got to, you're the individual, and if you're planning your cycle, you've got to, your first cycle and your first stint, you need to understand all these things that you could potentially need to do. Because if you're just thinking about taking a little bit of test and you don't take all these other things into account, the fact it's going to affect your mood, it's going to affect your everyday response to situations, it's going to affect your motivation, your drive to do stuff and achieve stuff throughout your life. The fact that it is going to have effects on your liver, kidney, heart, etc., blood pressure, hematocrit levels. The fact that if your hormones get out of whack, you might be making decisions and doing stuff that are out of your control. For example, the amount of people that I've seen get depressed, they think they're depressed during post-psychotherapy and they break down crying and whatnot, and it's just because the hormones are completely out of whack and they think they've got depression. They go to the doctor and they end up on antidepressant medications, but it's just because the hormones are messed up. You know what I mean? It can really affect your whole life. So you need to understand that you've got lots of different hormones that you're going to be changing, they're going to be going up and down, etc. Things can get out of whack and make you feel a certain way. You need to know what they are, you need to be educated enough on them. You need to understand what can do what, so that if you're experiencing a certain side effect, you can look at your blood panel and go, oh, this is what's causing it, I'm going to bring this down, I'm going to bring this up. Oh, I've done that now, I feel better, etc. You need to understand the fact that you're going to need to take some supplements to stay healthy. You're going to need to look into things that you can take every single day so that you can prevent issues happening long term. You can also need to look at the supplements that you can take, over-the-counter supplements, to keep everything working real well. Like I say, it's a big decision, guys. This is a long-ass video which I've covered a lot of different subjects other than what to stick in you. So, as an overview, to wrap this up, if you want the short and sweet, little bit of testosterone, learn how to optimize your hormones, learn how to stay as healthy as possible, understand which hormone levels feel best for you, because everyone's going to be a little bit different. Understand how you react to certain drugs when you add them in for a blast. If you don't like a certain drug, if it makes you feel a certain way, don't take it. And overall, just be sensible. And if you're young and you're thinking that you don't care about health, let me tell you something, from someone who did that exact same route, you're wrong, because when you hit 30, you'll be thinking about your health, and you'll be like, shit, wish I did all this stuff. So the reason why I put this video out there is this is a lot to do with my experience with PEDs, things I've learned over the years, the mistakes I've made, and I'm telling you guys so that hopefully you don't make the same mistakes. Hopefully that helps, hopefully you learned something from it. If you didn't, I'm fucking sorry. And if you didn't understand some of the shit I said, guess what, motherfucker? Rewind the video, watch it again, you little fuck.